Start the. All right. Thanks for joining, Eric.
Yeah,
So
my pleasure.
this is the Fundraising Like a Pro with AI, practical techniques to use AI to support fundraising effort. Since you're also a former founder, then this will be interesting also for you, and I hope that I can get some insight from your past experience as well.
Sounds great.
So this is introduction. This is brought to us by Stifel. Want to tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So Stifel is a global investment bank that has a really strong and growing venture banking division. If you think about Stifel, take a step back, we're historically a wealth management company, which is really the base of our deposits. And so if you think about our deposit base, it's really broadly diversified, not as much exposure to large businesses. But that stable and diversified deposit base really makes us a pretty safe institution in the venture banking space. We in the venture banking group here in New York lend to all the way to $50 million facilities. So I think our value add, in addition to the credit standpoint, is really helping to serve as a connector and facilitator to the venture ecosystem. We have very strong relationships with venture capitalists who we bank. We provide lines of credit to their firms. We provide, capital to their portfolio companies, and therefore, are really trying to sort of bear hug the venture ecosystem and can provide a lot of value introducing to investors and customers, as well as all of your typical banking services. So that's a little bit about Stifel.
Great. Thank you. So, really quickly, have you been using AI tools? I'm just curious about your AI experience. Not for
Yeah,
fun
I've
in general, just like in general.
Yeah, 100%. I used some for developing a pitch deck, as
Nice.
well as content creation, emails and copy and things like that. But haven't really done as much around the investor research and targeting piece in particular.
Okay. So it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on the pitch deck part because that's what we're gonna dive into today. And which tool do you use?
It's been a while. I actually worked with somebody to develop it, so I know that he was using AI and had super fast turnaround. But yeah, hadn't can't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah. But for like the content development and all that, you're using ChatGPT or something else?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so just a little bit about me. Been coaching startups for a little while. That's how I met Katya. Help her in a previous role as a startup accelerator founder and like operator in her role. And I've coached more than 200 startups in the past 9 years. And from this AI integration, I've seen people increasing productivity by 3x, not 3%, by 3x, because this is crazy fast and it's very exciting. And I've been in the industry in terms of product and design for 20 plus years and work on like the education side and also like as an IC. So that's just a little bit background. Some of the companies I work with there, just really quick intro. And if you want to connect with me, that's my LinkedIn. And the reason why we're here is to learn about these things. So by the end of this workshop, you will understand the fundraising process and key AI opportunities to help you go faster and multiply your productivity and learn to audit your pitch deck using AI powered techniques. So how do we know that it's effective? How do we know that it's working, right? And then apply practical AI method to improve pitch content and visual. This is going to be quite hands-on, so you'll see that the agenda. So we're doing the introduction right now, and then really quickly, I'm gonna go through a fundraising process breakdown and the AI opportunities for the different parts of the fundraising stages. And then after that, we get to the more interactive hands-on part where we'll audit a pitch deck and find ways to improve them with the help of AI. And then we get to the hands-on practice. We're going to actually develop our own pitch deck by the end of this. And then we'll have Q&A and next steps.
Great.
So this is the big picture, right? So you did investor research, you mentioned a little bit about that. Like, who do we target? This is very similar to any process with sales or design. We start with the who. And then from there, we create the narrative. What are we pitching to them, right? The materials, the assets that we use to pitch. And then we make sure that we have the correct data. We make sure that it's actually credible, it's accurate, the financials and other data. And then we secure the meeting, we prepare for the meeting, follow up, and try to close the deal. So in phase one, for investor research, the key activities are defining the investment criteria, right? Like who are we targeting, right? Are we targeting VC, angel, seed? Where are you? And then analyzing their portfolio, their thesis, their sector, the size that they're after. And then researching investor preferences, the business model, the team size, etc. Some of the common challenges are spending too much time researching investors who aren't a fit. So you're wasting your time, right? Not knowing who to target means that you're targeting nobody, right? And missing ideal investors because it's the same thing. You're not, they're not on your radar because you don't know who to target. So this is very, very important to develop that profile. And then also the difficulty determining the investor preference and thesis. All of this is to say that you need to know who your investor persona is. And the AI opportunity here, obviously with deep research, if you guys have used it, it's very, very good at that, like going deep and also really wide, so that you could create this investor profile and personalize your content for them in a way that makes sense for them, speaking their language, targeting them. And you also, the other thing is that you're not wasting your time building investor list that is not even relevant. So the second, the pitch development. This is something that we talked about a little bit earlier, creating the why now, why you narrative, developing stage appropriate pitch elements. This is also important. So related to the previous one, obviously once you know who we're targeting, then we can actually talk to them in a way that makes sense to them, right? In a way that actually resonates with them. And the content that makes sense and relevant to them. And building a compelling investor story. So we're building a vision here. We're selling a future, a vision, right? And the common challenges are creating content that resonates with investor versus customer. This is a typical thing that I noticed in my previous work with a lot of startups, is that they want to reuse the same thing that they use to pitch customers. Well, the investor is a different persona, so they can't reuse that for some cases. Presenting complex technical solutions in accessible ways, that's another thing that a lot of startup founders, especially the ones who came from technical background, get too excited and get too deep into talking about like the technical side of things, and they alienate the audience. Balance confidence with realistic expectations. If the investor flag you as like BSing, of course they're not gonna want to talk to you, right? So the opportunity here, which we're going to dive a little bit deeper today, is strengthening the narrative structure and identifying the gaps so that the story makes sense for them and makes them want to talk to you. Phase three, making that content more robust with the financial models, projection with the data, right? Creating the TAM, SAM, and SOM analysis, the market analysis, organizing due diligence materials to make sure that what you're presenting makes sense to them and it sounds realistic, right? Building defensible market sizing, financial projections, that's the common challenges. Finding reliable industry data without expensive subscription. This can get really, really expensive trying to find this data. Now, with a lot of these AI tools, you can actually get a lot of these for free or very cheap. Creating visually compelling data representation, and that's a big part of that. After you get the data, how do you present it in a way that can resonate and can also like communicate the essence of what you're communicating quickly? So accelerating market research is one AI opportunity. Data gathering is a big one, and visualization, communicating it. And then phase four for outreach and marketing. Once you have all those things, then you need to actually book the meetings, prepare for the meeting, follow up, close the deal, right? So crafting effective cold outreach, that's another key activity. Preparing for meetings and follow-ups, and of course, managing the investor pipeline, because this is like a funnel again. Common challenges is maintaining momentum and relationship quality at scale. Personalization would be something that AI can definitely help us with this. especially if you could train it to speak in your tone and style, then you can actually use that very, very effectively. Differentiating your outreach from hundreds of other founders, right? So that's like different because they get tons and tons of pitches, tons and tons of meetings. How do you differentiate? Handling objection, addressing concerns effectively, another one. So AI opportunity here is the meeting pitch coaching. So you can have the AI to coach you, to pitch, to also personalize the follow-ups and objection handling. Again, like this is like tying it back to the first one, the first phase of your profile, creating your investor profile, right? The more robust, the more detailed your investor profile is, the more you know about them, obviously, the more you can talk to them in an effective manner. So with that, we're going to get into the pitch deck optimization portion. And this is the reality, right? So this shouldn't be as a surprise to you guys. 2 minutes. That's the average time spent on each pitch deck, because these guys get tons and tons of pitch decks to review, and 2 minutes is actually sometimes less than that, sometimes less than 2 minutes. And if we take the average number of slides, which is like 12 slides, 12 to 15, let's say 12, they're on the lower end, that's essentially like 10 seconds per slide. So that's a lot of time for a lot of founders. This is shocking. So something to keep in mind. So concise is key. There's a lot of pitch decks, so we need to quickly they need to quickly assess the potential of the startup, and then focus on the essential, right? So the big things that they want to see: the market opportunity, the product, the service, unique competitive advantage, the team. So what would get their attention? And the goal is really to get a meeting. The goal is the meeting, not like to get the investment. At this point, the goal is the meeting, so you can actually get a higher opportunity to actually close that investment deal. Okay, so some of the pitch deck issues are essentially only on these two things, on the two sides: the content and visual design, right? The content, missing content, this is like the most important part. The content is, they say content is king. So the missing content, maybe the key content, like market size is missing, or like the problem is missing. And sometimes the content is all there, but the narrative is disjointed. The flow of the story is disjointed. It's hard to follow, and then the investor would just like tune out, right? And then accuracy, obviously. If for whatever reason your data seems unrealistic to them, or seems like it's too aggressive, they would be like, oh, this is a red flag. They're gonna discount the entire thing. On the visual design side, obviously it needs to look professional, right? It needs to look credible. Sometimes if it looks like it's something that is done by a middle schooler, then they probably won't take you seriously. Too much content on the slide. Like this is related to what we talked about earlier. A lot of time the founders are excited to talk about their baby, and they get too excited, too technical, and they lost the audience. Confusing layout or visualization related to that, like some of the more technical founders tend to use tons and tons of diagrams, which are like very technical, to show how knowledgeable they are, which in some cases could be useful, depending on the target audience again, but in a lot of cases could alienate the user, the audience. Now, so this is where we're going to start into the interactive side of things. I'm going to stop sharing this screen. I'm going to share my desktop because I want to show you guys an example of a pitch deck that we're going to use for this first demo. All right, you guys can still see my desktop now? Yes?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so this is a pitch deck from one of the startups I worked with in the past. So I'm just gonna go through this real quick, and then we're gonna assess this, audit this with Claude to see what Claude says. Okay. And as we do that, I'm going to show you some of the techniques that could be useful. So I'm just gonna flip through this real quick. The problem, the solution. competition, why now, market size, business model, the team, traction, deal. Okay, so that's what we got, right? So we don't need to spend too much time on this because we're gonna have Claude analyze this. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna drop this here. So that's the pitch deck that we just look at. And then I'm gonna have Claude role play for us. So this is the prompt I'm giving it. As an early stage investor, review this deck. Simulate reviewing this as a busy investor, spending typical time to review decks. Narrate your thoughts. So by giving the context of this is the role that you play, and then also giving the context and limitation of the typical time, Claude would give us something that's more useful than just say, tell us what you think, follow best practices, right? And then the other additional thing is narrate your thoughts, and I'm going to use the extended. You may have like better result with this or not. You can try it out, but normally with narrate your thoughts, with the thinking extended, it would spend more time to be more careful in actually reviewing it. So let's see what we get. So it's, as you can see, that we can actually watch the thought process. Also, this is helpful in addition to just the output itself. So it's reviewing to make sure that it actually understands what it's looking at. So this is useful. So it's looking at this, right? And then it's interesting how it's trying to mimic the way human thinks. Like, all right, Paladin, another AI platform. Let me see what they've got here, right? Initial impression, clear design. So the design is good, focus on AI power, blah, blah, blah. Problem solution, competitive landscape. I'm not going to read everything. Market size, deal terms, final thoughts. Overall, this is a typical early stage HR tech startup. The founding team has good credential, blah, blah, blah. But like the deck lacks depth and on several fronts. Okay. So to make this useful, even more useful, I'm going to follow up with this. So I can quantify it and I could iterate on this from 0 to 10, with 0 equals definite no and 10 definite yes. How would you rate this deck? Right. So still role playing as an investor. Why not lower? So it can tell us what's working and what can I do to increase the rating by 1 point. So this way we can also reuse this to iterate on this, right? So after we improve it, we can use the same process to get another rating. So again, it's looking at this. So investment rating 5 out of 10. Why not lower? I wouldn't rate it lower because it has this. So we know what to keep. To increase the rating by 1 point, I recommend. So this is the reason why I say 1 point as opposed to get it to 10 is because if you ask for that, then it could just give you too much information. That's not actionable. The whole point of this is to iterate to actually act on it, right? Clarify your differentiation, detailed use of funds, strengthen the market timing argument, including in that kind of way, right? And then to make this even more actionable, I could ask another follow-up question, which is, please prioritize these based on impact versus effort. So this way, I could start focusing on, okay, what do I need to improve first, right? And then it's giving me the why also, why high impact. So investor exactly Now, another question that I could ask is something like this. Is there any missing content that affected the rating? Unanswered questions in your mind that pose a great risk, right? What is missing? So it's going back and reviewing it. So this way, we're starting to get into the mindset of the investor, right? As opposed to thinking about it from the perspective of the founder or the customer, we're thinking about this from the perspective of the investor. So several key pieces missing information. You go to market strategy, technical differentiation, right? So from here, I could start improving on these, and when I'm ready, I could even ask it, like if I go back up here for this, right? Detailed use of funds. And then I'm going to, so here, detailed use of funds, right? This is the first time it's mentioned. Add a slide showing exactly how the 35K will be allocated and what specific milestones you'll achieve with this. So what I could do next is that give me examples of content for the details use of funds based on the the stage of my startup and industry. So starting to get more tangible, right? So I'm starting to ideate on like what is it that I could start putting in there. Now the next step from here, potentially I could ask it to also do research to make sure that this is validated, right? Because with Claude, it has the web search if I want to turn it on, or I could use other tools like Perplexity and whatnot. Before I continue, questions, comments? We're good? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so, Daniel. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So that's that. And then let me just go back to my useful. Okay, so the next thing is we want to make sure that what we're getting is actually something that is not just unique to Claude, to one LLM, right? So I'm sure that you've experienced that you ask feedback from one person, an expert, and that person said, oh, do X. And then you ask for feedback from another person, they give you the anti-X, the exact opposite. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to use different LLMs to compare. What do they tell us? To see if this is actually what we should act on, and this is something that we can take seriously, right? So I'm going to use Grok, and I'm going to do this exact same thing. Drop it in here. I'm going to use think. I'm just going to copy the first prompt here. Drop it there. Run it. I'll do the same with Gemini. There's no think here, looks like. Let me just say deep research. I'm just going to use the flash. And then I'm going to drop the file also here. Let's say if Grok is okay, it's thinking, it's running, and then also ChatGPT. This way we can start seeing the pattern. It's reason. Okay, this is ready, so it's going to run it. This is ready, I'm gonna run it. Okay, what do we get? So typically spend a few minutes, blah, 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 blah. So I'm just gonna go straight to the bottom. Final thoughts, the problem, predicting the future. Predict the custom team has potential, but this deck isn't ready for prime time. I'd pass unless the founder clean it up significantly. Okay, so this one is giving us like lower rating. So I'm going to ask the follow-up, this one, and see what it tells us. Because sometimes that's a problem with a lot of these AI tools is that too much information, we're like, I don't know how to act on this, right? So that's giving this. While here, the solution, I'm going to go straight to. So this is very more favorable. I would definitely take a meeting with the team to learn more. Key question I have going to the meeting would be how exactly does the AI predict future performance and what data inputs are needed. And it's also asking about the 350K investment, right? So I'm going to ask that same question, follow up here for ChatGPT. That's the initial verdict. Deck is concise but too high level. As a business, I would flag the following follow-ups, use of funds also. So we can start seeing the pattern, right? So I'm going to ask it so that we can see the rating across the board. So a 3, I think it's giving us a 3 out of 10. Yeah, so Grok is more brutal.
Yeah.
Let's see what Gemini gives us. Gemini is a 7.
Interesting. All over the board.
Yep. And ChatGPT 4. So this is to validate that thinking that feedback is something that we need to take with a grain of salt, right? We need to see the pattern. Where do we see that? So what I would do with this is do multiple LLMs like this, consolidate the feedback, and then see where the pattern lies to make the changes. But I think we could start seeing the pattern of like, okay, so you need to update this one, that one. Okay. So that's what we got from this one. Continuing on. Now we're gonna create the pitch deck, right? So this is probably the tool that you use, Eric. It's called Gamma. So with this, the promise is to allow us to create a pitch deck with one prompt, like within seconds. And it's true, but in a lot of cases, it needs like a lot of work, right? So here, what we could do is this is gamma.app can generate, which is this one, create from one line prompt a few seconds. So let's say that we're trying to create a LinkedIn competitor, right? So I'm going to ask it to create a pitch deck, and here's the prompt. I'm gonna ask it to make, let's say, 10 cards. Pitch deck for an early stage pre-series A startup that's revolutionizing professional networking using AI to connect people in a real way where LinkedIn and other networks have failed. That's it. I'm gonna start with generating outline. It's interesting, they used to just go straight to creating the deck. Now they learn, they iterate and give us the outline first. Came up with the name, Nexus. And obviously all these things are just placeholder that we need to update, right? But it's giving us the idea of what to include and the flow. So the introduction, basically the title, the problem, the solution, how it works, opportunity, the market size, business model, traction, go-to-market, competitive, funding, and vision. There's no team, looks like. There are things like that that we may need to add, but let's see what it gives us. Oh, we could also choose, I'm just going to choose the basic. So this is one way to just quickly get a visually appealing deck started, right? So this way you don't have to worry too much about like, oh, it's gonna look bad, blah, blah, blah. It's gonna look professional. That said, though, some of these are quite obviously generated by AI. You could see that, like some of the images has a lot of cheese, right? Quite cheesy images, like AI cheese images. You may want to update those, but a lot of the visualization is there, right? So you can replace some of these, and then to update these, you could just quickly go there, or you can also edit with the AI. Not the best result a lot of times, but what's cool is that, for example, I'm gonna say use one row with 4 column layout instead of 2 by 2 grid. That's if it understands. Yep. Right. So it's just like boom, done. Instead of moving things around, got it done so you can focus on the content. And this is producing an HTML pitch deck, so you can share it quickly, and you can also download it, and that's what we're gonna do. So I'm going to, where is it? There it is. So you could export it as, I'm gonna export it as PDF. Okay, so I got that, and I'm gonna, so the next step would be, oh, I'm going to just quickly bring it to Claude, and this is something that we can do again to review this, right? So it's the same process as before. I could just like bring this here. And use the same prompt. And I'm curious, actually, if this would perform better. I'm guessing that it would because it's bogus data. Any questions, comments, thoughts so far? Eric,
No,
Dan?
it seems like a great tool to get an initial template going, and then you can iterate from there.
Oh, I'm going to go down to the very bottom, quick assessment. Yeah, I'll put this in my potential follow-up pile. Not an immediate yes, but what conversation if their metrics stack up. So I want the data. So according to this, right? Okay, so the next thing is what I would like you guys to do is to generate the pitch deck, like what we did with Gamma.app, and then pull it to Claude or one of the LLMs. And I'm going to give you the prompts so you can experience this yourself. I'm going to give you the prompt in the chat for the audit, but first just generate a quick pitch deck for an idea that you may have. So it's Gamma.app, and these are the prompts.
Oh no.
Broke on you?
Yeah, my my work restrictions, security restrictions are preventing me from using it. I'm gonna see if I can get around it.
Daniel, you there?
Yes, you're referring to me?
Yes. Are you able to were you able to follow along?
Yes, no problem. I actually had a question. I was just typing it out. Do you mind if I just ask it?
Go for it.
Sure. As a in investor circles and in talking with other VCs, perhaps, do you find that investors are using AI to screen all pitch decks sometimes, and then if they don't get a rating back of 5 or 6, they don't bother looking at it? I'm sure everyone's trying to optimize their time. Is that ready for prime time yet, or people talking about it?
Well, I know that they've been using it. I don't think I haven't heard anyone actually publicly sharing how they actually use it because they don't want us to also outsmart them.
Of course.
But I think this is just typical that like, okay, you make sure that you have all these things, all your ducks in a row, right? In terms of that rating, in addition to, so what we have here is to make sure that we have everything there. And then at least the quality is good enough. Now, they're going to add their own secret sauce on top of that, right? That's what would affect their own rating that they're not going to share with us. But we could get a sense from the whole what kind of companies they invested in before, right? All the profile
Right.
stuff. We could use that to actually provide knowledge to fine tune our AI to actually optimize the rating system also to
Makes
target.
sense.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
like
great. It makes sense.
yep, that's the kind of thing that we can like just that we can take advantage of AI to actually help us with, right? Like get more data, deep research on this investor. Based on that, then create even like you can even just straight up ask the AI based on these things and the best practices of uh, reviewing pitch decks, create some kind of a rubric for me and rating system.
Understood. Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So Eric, were you able to get to Gamma?
I don't think I'm going to be able to get past the our security blocks, unfortunately. Sorry, Danny.
Yeah, no worries. Daniel, are you gonna do you have the time to play around with this thing or we should move
I
it?
have gamma.app written down. I'll be able to get to it later.
Okay.
The stage that I'm in right now will be this week. I'll be starting my outreach, so I'll be fine tuning any last things in the deck. It'd be
You're
extremely
already
helpful to run it through LLMs and I have my investor list put together. So personalizing some outreach is going to be helpful for me using some of these.
Yeah, one thing that could be helpful for you in that is there's this thing called lab profile. Okay, so this is like to profile the way people communicate, especially if you could, let's say you're targeting a particular investor, and I'm just making it up, like Peter Thiel, right?
Right.
Especially the ones who have public persona like that and they've spoken in public, then you can gather those information, the way they speak, and then you can use that to communicate back to them in the way that resonate with them.
I like that.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to get introduced or you started talking to them, this could be really useful because then you know what they respond well to.
Yeah, the biggest is as you mentioned before, in a sea of hundreds of investors, what are the things that you can write in these first few lines that can really stand out and make them maybe spend 3 minutes instead of 2 minutes?
Yep, yep. And I think if you could somehow call back their past investment or their past successes, right? Because that brings them good feeling. They would want more of that. That could encourage them to spend more time with you.
Makes sense. Great, thank
Cool.
you.
Okay, moving on then. We're gonna just close this, talk about this, what we covered today, the process, common issues, how to audit, creating pitch deck with AI tools, and technique to improve both the content and visual. And with that, what's next? There is Stifel on Compliment Stifel. You could have one-on-one coaching with me if you open an account and you can talk to Eric. Eric, you want to drop your email there in the chat? And then there's
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
workshop. Sounds like Daniel, you're already past this, but there is a workshop for market sizing with AI, basically doing research on the TAM, SAM, and SOM analysis 2 weeks from now. And that is it. Thanks for attending.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. And Daniel, if there's any way that we can be helpful at Stifel with investor introductions, would love to learn a little bit more about what you're building, and share a little bit more about, Stifel and the platform that we have and, the connections that we can facilitate as you kickstart your fundraising.
Yeah, no, that would be great. If you don't mind me asking right now, can you give me a quick 30-second overview of what Stifel does? I missed the first few minutes of the conversation due to I guess the link wasn't at a different link that wasn't working, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So Stifel is a full service investment bank and commercial bank. You can think of us as really having three distinct businesses that all work together. Historically, we've been a wealth management company, and that provides a really stable base of deposits. If you think about a bank's balance sheet, we're kind of like the inverse of SVB, which is where I started my career and worked previously. Rather than, a lot of business accounts that are over 250,000 in deposits, we sweep cash from our wealth management business, which has a very diversified, base of deposits among thousands of individuals. And so very stable deposit base. We also have an investment bank that goes, that works alongside our wealth management platform that has a very strong specialization in tech. So, we help founders and companies with fundraising on that end when the time comes, and produce research reports for them. And then where I sit is in the commercial bank, in the venture banking space. So we, help companies with their banking needs, starting from formation and their first bank account all the way through to, $50 million credit facilities. And the value that we have is really in our network with the venture capitalists, who we bank. We actually provide lines of credit to those, to the funds themselves, and then, support their portfolio companies with their banking and credit needs as well. So what I do and what my team does is really help founders find the right investors, connect with potential customers, and support them with great coaches in our ecosystem like Danny as well.
Great. No, that's excellent. What would be next if for a startup at our stage, where we raise pre-seed funding, we're at seed stage right now, going into our round. What type of resources would you mentioned a platform possibly? Is there what else does Stifel have, or am I a good fit for what you guys are at the stage you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll work with companies and help them get set up with something as simple as a bank account, the day they get formed. It sounds like you've already raised your pre-seed. And so we
Correct.
can connect you to folks in our investor coverage team, depending on what vertical you're in, and see if we have any particular connections within the sort of investor group that you might be looking at. And depending on the size of your seed round, if you're interested, we could also, sort of follow those conversations with, potential proposals for a credit facility as well, that can increase your runway, in tandem with that Series seed raise.
Got it. And for the credit facility, is that require these? Can you do that with pre-revenue companies or only post-revenue?
Yeah, we
Or
can
minimal
look at.
revenue is our stage right now.
Yeah, we work with a lot of pre-revenue companies.
Okay. All right, great. Well, I appreciate your email, Eric. I'll reach out to you for some further information. And Danny, thanks so much. This was extremely helpful. I'm definitely going to start putting some of these in action later today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Daniel.
Thank you both. Have a good one.
Thanks.